Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, on a mission to create remodeling experiences worthy of 5-star online reviews. See the difference at callmosby.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Chess woman grandmaster Dorsa Derakhshani came to the U.S. from Iran to earn her undergraduate degree at St. Louis University. Today, she's a Mizzou medical student, a St. Louis chess club instructor, and a U.S. citizen. But Derakhshani has long been passionate about freedom of speech and expression and used her platforms to advocate for those freedoms. She's also committed to shedding light on the real-life fear and uncertainty that people like her family and friends are facing in her home country. That includes experiences that came before the start of the current U.S. war against Iran and what is happening now. I spoke with Dorsa Derakhshani yesterday, and this hour we'd like to share that conversation. Dorsa, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, I wish that we were speaking under different circumstances.
Yes, me too. I think especially with the recent ceasefire, there's a lot of mixed feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad to be here to see if I can be of any sort of voice. I honestly wish we had someone from inside the Iran to have this conversation with, but considering the Iranian regime has cut all communications for the past 40 days, I don't really think that's realistic, but I would have much rather had that, honestly. Sorry.
No.
Please.
That's perfectly understandable. And this particular conflict between the U.S. and Iran, it began on February 28th, and that was close to 6 weeks ago. You were talking about the lack of communication that you've had with your father and extended family. Were you able to get in touch with them, though, soon after February 28th?
No, not at all, because this is this lack of communication is not something being done by foreigners. And I mean foreigners for relative to Iranian people. It's the Iran government, the Islamic regime government, blocking all communication on its own civilians. I laugh because I feel like if I don't laugh, I will cry. I don't have the exact word to describe it. I don't want to say it's a basic right to have communication, but considering how everything these days is done through internet, it's just a different form of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the word I can choose at this moment. It's just another form of oppression that the Islamic regime is doing on Iranian people inside Iran, and to an extent on us who are outside Iran as well, because we can't communicate with anyone inside the country.
What have you been able to find out about what your family, your father, your aunt, uncle, cousins, and grandparents are going through?
From everything we understand, it's a very scary situation. Again, these are news that we would get maybe a week or two later when somebody would manage to get out of the country, and they had like a big pile of handwritten notes that if they felt like it, they could connect, they could like text this number and let them know that relative was alive like a week ago. That feels like something I would see out of a movie at this point, but that has been a big form of communication. And we know that a lot of the places, like the specific neighborhood that my grandparents lived in almost all their adult life, was heavily bombed. And we still don't know if they're okay or not. Same thing with my father, actually. The neighborhood that he had his practice on in Shahryar, it was heavily bombed. And we assumed that they had made it north, but last we knew they didn't because of fuel shortage. So they were kind of in between routes, but I wish we had more recent news.
I understand that there was a good Samaritan, as it were, who left Iran recently and was able to share a message with you.
Yeah, not with me directly, but with my brother. He's currently in UK, so he has a UK number. And I think there was an assumption that if this Good Samaritan was caught trying to send a message to an American number, this might have been even more severe for this person. So they just reached out to my brother. It was just like a picture of a message, handwritten message that was basically saying, we're okay. We knew this would happen eventually, and no matter what happens, we're proud of you.
Dorsa, what does this uncertainty about your family feel like for you and your mom and for your brother?
I feel like it's just so unreal for us to have to kind of keep up with everyday life when this thing is happening. And I don't just mean the bombings on the Iran, I also mean the stuff that was going on previously, the Iranian government attacking the protesters and just everything that was going on since beginning of this year. It has been just impossible to carry on with just day-to-day life. And most of my friends and family, most of like people that I work with, people that I have to kind of, I guess, answer to, they're all extremely understanding. They're all very supportive. But it's just, I wish I had the words to describe it. It's just feels so unreal that we live in the same world. And I remember one of my high school friends had posted something on her story that somebody was like making a joke about, now that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, will we get our like Shein packages on time? And I remember just, it's so unrealistic that we both live in the same world and we have such different perspectives and experiences. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are crazy things happening in different countries that I know nothing about. And even if I did, I might not have as strong feelings for. But just, I don't know, just feels very unreal to have to explain to someone that, hey, I'm going through this. That is like, I'm not being directly attacked, like I'm physically okay, but I don't have the bandwidth to deal with the things that I'm supposed to be handling, because so much of my energy is going to just being okay.
Who or what have you found helpful over the past several weeks? Whether it's to stay informed or just to stay grounded and to hold together what you can?
It sounds like you've been talking to my therapist. I think it's kind of a mixture of things. I found that in a way, especially at the beginning, and again, when I say beginning, to me, these conflicts, the unsafety of Iranian people started from January, not just end of February. End of February just is still unsafe. It's just a different type of unsafety. It just feels very weird because, let's say January, where there was no talk of US involvement, we are watching from outside, worrying, trying to look at the pictures that is being posted of thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of Iranians who protested and ended up in body bags. We were trying to just see if I'm looking at those pictures and seeing, is there anyone that I know in these pictures? And that's, I don't know if there's a word for that feeling, because I would have to kind of turn off my emotional side and just see how I can hold on to just scrolling through pictures, because I need my brain to be working the best it can. But it's not easy, and I felt like maybe for a couple of days I could not cry and I could just be okay. And there was a very hurtful song in Farsi that has been going around. And I say hurtful because the girl who's singing it, the fear in her voice and the way she's singing it, because I don't know if many people know this, but under the IRGC, under the Islamic Republic, women singing is prohibited. So you're not allowed to sing in public. You're allowed to talk, you're allowed to laugh, but you're not allowed to sing. So the fact that this young girl was singing, and as soon as she heard like a small police whistle, she stopped. And just the fear, just that one scene, just thinking about it, I feel like I have a mix of rage and a mix of, I can't get that song out of my head. Yeah, that was the one of the things that I felt like I couldn't hold my logic together as much as I wanted to. So just seeing that songs on different posts, it kind of became like a soundtrack of my life since January. And I think the other part that I just felt so unreal about was weeks ago there was a thunderstorm, and my cat, who I've named Pishi, which literally means cat in Farsi, was afraid of thunderstorms, and he kept coming to me and wanted me to comfort him. And kind of in that moment it just hit me that he gets so scared. So all the animals and all the little kids in Iran must also be so terrified of all the noises and all the sounds and all the bombs and all the shootings that's happening in the streets. And I couldn't really hold it together. So to answer your question of what's kind of been working for me, I don't really know. I think it's a mixture of, I've learned to not hold back too much. So if I need to vent, I will vent to my friends. Even if it's just texting to get it out there, I'll get it out there. If it's at the moment, if I feel like if I talk about it and it's not gonna make me feel any better, and I have a deadline, I need to meet these deadlines, I think I'll just sweep it under the rug and try to deal with it later. It sometimes works, but then it's just something as small as just realization about just cats and dogs. Well, actually, in Iran, there are no dogs because they're prohibited. Oh my God. Sorry, but just thinking of the helpless animals and little kids that they don't even understand what's going on. And I'm not trying to say like adults deserve what's happening. No, nobody deserves what's happening. But it's just, at least they understand it. But for a little kid or for an animal, they won't understand what's a bomb or what's a shooting that's happening, or this, like, they don't really understand that, and just that hit me so hard. I see a lot of my high school friends who are not in Iran anymore, but they have parents in Iran, siblings in Iran. They're posting nonstop of how they're feeling and how they haven't been able to connect. And I think actually today I saw one of them posted that she did manage to contact her parents for a few brief moments, and she recorded it because she was afraid that this might be the last time that she hears their voice. And it's, I think the worst part is, from what I remember seeing on her stories, she had posted something like her parents were telling her that we knew this, they were like trying to comfort her. That's like, they weren't trying to leave the Iran. They were like, we don't have anywhere to go. We don't, like, we knew this would happen. This is our fate. We'll just have to, see what happens at the end. We're at peace with it. We just want you to be okay. And just that part of it, just, I don't know, just hurt something in me that I can't put my finger on exactly. Just like people who are getting bombed by US/Israel and being hunted and attacked by their own government, they're trying to comfort us outside here. Like I if there's a word for it, please do let me know.
Do you have a word for it in Farsi?
I don't think so. I think it's I don't want to say surrounding to your destiny or fate, but I think that might be the closest thing I would assume so, but I can't speak on their behalf. And that's the other thing I want to be extremely clear with it. Anytime I have a discussion with anyone about this, is I'm not the one getting attacked. I'm safe and sound, sitting in my own home in the middle of Missouri. So I cannot begin to understand how people inside the Iran feel. And I don't want to be their spokesperson. I don't want to tell you that Iranian people want to be bombed, or I don't want to tell you that Iranian people want this to stop. I can't tell you that, because as much as I've lived, I was born in Iran, I was raised in Iran, I have so many experiences growing up under that regime, but at the end of the day, I left. I'm not the one getting attacked. So I'm not the one who is in danger of losing my life because of this. So I don't feel right saying Iranian people want this or Iranian people want that. I can just speak to my experiences and the specific experiences I've heard about or I've been told. Or if somebody in Iran tells me, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I want, then I'm comfortable saying, like, this person told me that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I don't think every single person in Iran feels a specific way. So it's just hard to have that discussion when the Iranian government has shut the internet off.
That was Dorsa Derakhshani. Dorsa is an Iranian-American, a woman grandmaster in chess, and a medical student at Mizzou. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. Let's return to our conversation with Dorsa Derakhshani. Dorsa came to the U.S. from Iran to study at St. Louis University. She's now living in Columbia, attending medical school at Mizzou, and she's also an instructor at the St. Louis Chess Club. I had the chance to speak with Dorsa yesterday to get a better understanding of how she's feeling at this moment amid the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran. Before the break, Dorsa was describing how it's impossible to understand the current perspectives of people living in Iran because there's an internet blackout in the country.
The Iranian government has effectively shut down the voice of Iranian people who are living in Iran, and there's 90 million of them. They know how much people need to communicate. They know how much people need to just keep up with what's happening. Because if, for example, if there is any specific warning about, hey, there's there's going to be bombing on these specific areas or locations or times, the Iranian people inside Iran will not know it, because not only they don't have access to this information because they don't have internet, but the Iranian state media also does not share that information. Mm-hmm. So there's no bomb shelter, there's no sirens, there's no way to tell the actual civilians of, hey, this attack is about to happen at this time, at this hour. And that part makes me think that under a circumstance where the primary goal of a government is the safety of its people, it would be logical to have shelters and have ways to keep them safe, such as letting them know when an attack might happen, where it might happen, what areas to avoid, or just basic things to keep its civilians safe. Mm-hmm. That would be my expectation if I was living under a government, that safety of its people was its number one priority. And from everything, not only I'm not even talking about my experiences growing up there, I'm just based on seeing what's happening, that's not what is happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons there's so many mixed feelings, because hypothetically under this, magical government that would care so much about its people, of course nobody would want to see that wonderful government get bombed and get attacked, because, the people in the government would be united. But this is not the case here. And when the government has been very effectively oppressing its own people, it's hard to just say this is good, this is bad, because it's not just all black and white now. It's there's so many different shades of gray in the situation that I feel like I wish I was a mind reader and I could tell you the exact intention of why and what is happening, but I do not have that power just yet.
Yeah. Dorsa, as you're taking in U.S. media, how news media in particular is covering what is happening, what are your thoughts about that? The way that this war and its consequences are being discussed by people in the U.S.?
There's a lot more layers and a lot more nuances that I think it's just so hard for people in U.S. to understand. But people in U.S. who've been born and raised here, I think earlier I just made the jest about how dogs are not allowed in Iran, and that sounds terrifying, honestly, because if you're a government that is killing its own helpless animals, that they didn't choose to be born here, they didn't choose to be here, and if you don't have enough kindness for it, it's something that people they can't even comprehend. And I also say this because I had I don't remember I had a meeting with I don't know, psychiatrist, psychologist. I had a mental health meeting that I was really looking forward to, and I was just talking about my traumas in bullet point, and I was just briefly mentioning oh yeah, the hijab police in Iran, blah blah blah, and then she was like, hold on, I don't know what that means. And it kind of just hit me that, oh, that's not common knowledge. And this is not, I love this like therapist. I want to continue working with this person, but just the realization that people can't comprehend the level of oppression that I experienced growing up in Iran, and people continue to experience growing up under the current Iranian regime. It hurts a little to see how people are trying to make it black and white. Mm-hmm. I think most people that I have talked to, and most people that I value their opinion, I think the one thing we all agree on is we don't want innocent civilians to be hurt. We want innocent civilians to have as peaceful of a life as they can. I think that's the bottom line that most people with conscience can agree on. But then it becomes like, okay, so some people think US attacking Iran equals evil. Some people think US attacking Iranian regime equals evil. Some people think Iranian regime attacking its own people equals evil. And it's hard to have that discussion if you don't understand the fear of living under Iranian regime. So I have very mixed feelings about this because, again, I lived through it. I survived. I'm out. But for people in Iran who are living under the fear of, am I going to die today from my government, or am I going to die today from a bomb? That I can't comprehend. I can't even begin to comprehend, but I think what's missing in the media, for the most part, from the things I've seen, is that discussion is not being done. The discussion of, okay, in a perfect world, there would be no wars. I agree. In a perfect world, the government would care about its people. I agree about that too. But we don't live in that perfect world. We're seeing injustice done all the time in different measures and levels and severities in all around the world. But I think just seeing how it was like open fire for Iranian government against its own people for protesting in January and February, especially early January, it was just, I don't think international media talked much about that. And I think most of the news started to pick up on February 28th.
That's Dorsa Derakhshani, an Iranian-American, a woman grandmaster in chess, and a medical student at Mizzou in Colombia. We'll pick up our conversation where we left off in just a moment. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. Let's get back to our conversation with Iranian-American Dorsa Derakhshani, who moved to the U.S. to study at St. Louis University. She now attends med school at Mizzou. Before the break, Dorsa shared how she wished there were greater international news coverage of the civilian protests in Iran in January, when an estimated thousands to tens of thousands of protesters were killed by Iranian armed forces. Here's Dorsa expanding on her understanding of what happened in January and what led to the protests.
I wasn't there. I can't tell you the facts on the ground. I can tell you what I know is that it wasn't like Iranian people were on the streets and just shooting stuff. Weapons are pretty illegal in Iran. You're not allowed to carry anything. So this was more of people were just in street chanting, and the government shut down Wi-Fi again, which they do have a pattern of doing. I remember I had just started med school, actually. It was my first block when Mahsa Amini was killed by the Iranian regime for wearing her hijab not to their liking. And I remember they cut off internet, and I couldn't communicate with my mom at the time. And I was losing my sanity. It was like I was just crying all around in my class, in front of my classmates. I didn't care who saw. I miss my mom. I wanted to talk to her. And I was terrified of what might happen to her because they shut off the Wi-Fi. And the last time before that I remember they shut off Wi-Fi was right before COVID, 2019, because I remember I was competing for SLU at a chess tournament in China. And we had traveled, we got to China, my mom was supposed to be there, and the Iranian regime had again cut off the Wi-Fi. So we couldn't see what's happening inside Iran. And I think that might have been the first time that they did it to that mass extent. And they murdered 1,500 people for protesting back in 2019. I don't have the exact numbers for January, but we know it was tens of thousands. It was like they would do anything to stop what they saw as unrest. So it didn't matter how many people they had to put down, didn't matter where they were shooting people. They even hunted people that I have friends who work in hospitals in Iran. They're doctors or nurses, and just kind of seeing from their perspective, it was extremely like, I can't explain, because if they helped these patients, if they helped the people who Iranian government had shot, Iranian government would prosecute the healthcare staff. And if they didn't help, then they would be healthcare workers who are not helping patients. Like, it doesn't make sense. So kind of seeing that there were so many people who chose not to go to hospital because they were terrified that the regime would hunt them down and it would take them, because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I have a hard time comprehending that.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually this is something else that's, I feel like I'm just trauma dumping on air now, but I was just talking I was just talking with one of my friends. We were middle of a casual conversation. I'm middle of writing my personal statements for why do I want to be a psychiatrist for residency applications. And I was asking this person for some guidance, just how much detail do I go in, what to talk about, what not to talk about. And he was like, just tell me like some stories about your childhood, or like tell me just talk for a little bit. And one of the things that I was talking about was like how when I was in 5th grade, I was like just walking back home from school, and this lady decided that she didn't like how long my hair was and it was sticking out from my scarf. So she chopped my hair off with a scissor in the street. And I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't go to the police because they would be like, well, it's, you know what? You shouldn't be showing your hair at the first place. And it's just the logic is so backwards that I was the victim, somebody did me wrong, and I can't do anything about it. I remember I just went home and I went upstairs and I took a scissor and I cut it even shorter. And to me, that was the smallest way to take some control back. And I lied to my mom. I told her I cut my own hair off. It was my choice. So just that small story. And then when I was done talking about it, my friend was looking at me like, I think pity was what I saw, and or maybe like wonder of just, wow, these things happen. Like it just, there's like a question mark. I think he actually turned into a question mark.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain these things, because I feel like if something like this happens in the US, I have a voice. It doesn't matter which politics I agree or disagree with. At least somebody will take me seriously. At least I can talk about it without going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the big thing that people who didn't grow up in Iran don't understand. the level of fear and the level of oppression is beyond anything you can imagine. I've just thought of another thing. Like, I'm sitting near giant windows right now, which I really like because I can see a lot of deer walking around and it brings me joy. But I remember growing up in Tehran, one of the big things that was kind of a routine at some point was like these, we would joke about it, that we would say they're like dressed like commandos, not like ninjas. I don't know how to translate that. Basically, wearing all black. Basically, they would go on the rooftops and see which houses had satellite dish, and they would like basically. I think the best way to describe it is like if you've watched Mission Impossible. I think those are the things we would see, that they would like fly down from the roof. They would like have a hook on top of the roof. They would fly down and kick out any of the houses that had satellite dish. They would just kick it because they didn't want people to have access to a satellite dish. And it's not like they would send like a notice of, hey, we saw you had the satellite dish, we don't approve of it, please take it down. It wasn't anything like that. It's more of the Iranian government saw something that they didn't like, and there was no need to communicate. There was no need to respect the civilians and their opinions, and they just saw something they didn't like and they took it down. And that's what they have been doing. That's the way they've been oppressing Iranian people for almost the past 5 decades.
Dorsa, in past interviews, you've shared that while you have love for your home country, you won't go back to Iran unless the regime changes. You talked about sitting by the window where you are right now. Are there places that you visit, maybe in your daydreams about Iran as you're sitting at the window in Colombia? If regime change does happen and the war ends, where would you go first? And what would you like to do?
Wow. I don't know, because I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the neighborhood I grew up in. It was quite green, and filled with kind of street cats and street animals, the way that it is where I'm living now. So my first thought would be if I could visit that, but I don't really know if it's there anymore. Weeks ago, I actually saw multiple videos of it, multiple different apartment complexes in Ekbatan being burned. So that's somewhere I would like to visit, but I don't know if there's something to go back to.
You were saying earlier, you'd mentioned that there's not much that you know. What you have shared with us is coming from your life experiences. What is the one thing you would like for people who are listening to this interview to understand about the people of Iran? And they're not all the same, of course, but what is the thing for us to be thinking about, especially given what you've expressed about your chief concern, and that is for the people?
I think the first thing I would say is, if you are talking about Iran and the current situation, and I don't mean if you're talking about the Iranian government or Iranian people, I'm just saying if you are not born and raised in Iran, and of course you are allowed to have an opinion, but you need to be extremely mindful of how you express it to the people like me who were born and raised in Iran and got out. Because as much as we understand you have the good intentions, that you want to be helpful, you want to make us feel included, and so many other things, it's not that simple for us, because there's a lot of mixed feelings. I wish I had a perfect answer to what is the right solution. I don't. And I think that's the big thing. Just be open and understanding and just listen to us. Listen to what we have to say. Let us vent to you. Let us trauma dump on you. Just make sure that if you have friends who are going through this, if you have Iranian friends, second generation, third generation, whoever, if you know someone who has Iranian relatives, just check on them. Just make sure they're okay. Just be as compassionate as you can be, because a lot of us are currently feeling the way I'm feeling. Confusion, fear, uncertainty, just trying really, really hard to be okay. And it can be very triggering to see uneducated opinions that are hard to talk to. So just be open. Just be open, just be compassionate, and be kind. Just let's oh, I think that might be another good one. I'm using all my therapy talks here now. Literally last session, one thing that my therapist said, from everything that I was describing, she said that what you're describing is a sense of belonging. And I just cried. And I told her, yes, I didn't realize it, but it's the idea of I never felt a sense of belonging in Iran. I never fit in. I never felt a sense of belonging in the chess world either, because it was very much a man's world. I felt more connected, but I didn't feel that sense of belonging. And for a lot of us, that is a huge thing that we don't even know we're missing. I didn't know I was missing it, and I'm about to be 28 next year, and I want to go into psychiatry. So I didn't have the words to describe something that I didn't even know I was missing. So as much as it hurts non-Iranians to see what's happening, it's not a game of who feels more or who has it worst, just try to be as compassionate as you can and make us feel not alone in this time. I think I would be extremely proud of myself if I could have even one person do that.
Dorsa, thank you so much for talking with us today. We'll be thinking of you and your family and friends.
Thank you.
That was Dorsa Derakhshani. She's an Iranian-American chess woman grandmaster, a Mizzou medical student, and a U.S. citizen. She spoke with us yesterday about the fear and uncertainty people like her family and friends are facing in Iran, and her own struggle to find peace of mind as war and repression continue in her home country.
Today's episode was produced and edited by Emily Woodbury.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.